Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer for Geek Vibes Nation, and I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm Dillon Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast.
And welcome to a new Video Addict new release roundup. If you are new here, first of all, welcome. What we do here is we go back and forth and we talk about the latest home video releases, some good, some bad, some awful, a little bit of everything in between. And it's something pretty much for everybody. But with that, I'm going to kick it off to you.
I appreciate that. Luckily, looking at my stack, I don't think I have anything awful this week, so I'm sitting pretty. So not the same for you. Okay, that's unfortunate. But my first title, I was very excited to check out, and I would say this is one of the rare Vinegar Syndrome partner labels that I've received with a slipcover, so that's pretty fun. This is the Music Box Selects release of Sylvio. So this is from, I believe it's 2017. And so, yeah, there's the slipcover. It's so for those who haven't gotten slipcovers from Vinegar Syndrome, they're pretty thick and like really well made compared to like just a normal slipcover. And I highly recommend it if you care about such things. But here's the standard artwork underneath. And this comes from directing creative duo Couture Audley and Albert Burney, both of whom I really like. One of my favorite films of last year was this movie called Strawberry Mansion, which I really adore. Mm-hmm. And I've also seen some other films from Couture, and I'll plug my Home Dance Film Festival again one time. We had a Christmas episode dedicated to this movie called Christmas Again, which starred Couture Audley. So if anyone wants to check out more of his work, that's a really great movie. And we had a really fun discussion about that on that podcast. But back to Sylvio. So this is pretty much what I love about independent filmmaking, because it kind of takes a strange concept and just treats it kind of just like matter-of-factly and just kind of like completely normally. And what it is, this was birthed from a Vine series, which elder millennials and stuff may be more familiar with, but Vine was a very a short-lived social media platform where you could create like 6-minute or 6-second videos, like a precursor to like TikTok, but just much shorter bite-sized things. This was expanded into a feature-length film, and it stars Sylvio as himself, because even on IMDb, he's credited as like Silvio Bernardi. There's like no actual actor as like dressed as Sylvio, but it is a person in a monkey suit. But in the world of this, it's just like a actual gorilla who's just wearing clothes and just he works at a call center, and he's just like just kind of down on his luck. He's just kind of like is kind of disillusioned with life, and he works at a call center that's like trying to they're debt collectors, so he's just kind of like not very enthused with life. And then one day he goes on like a call, or he goes on a collection where he ends up at like this kind of like public access kind of television show place. And he inadvertently becomes kind of like a public access like celebrity. And it's kind of an examination of like place of like artistry in contrast with consumerism. But prior to this would like put on little puppet shows for himself and like film it and everything. But now he's like getting famous for doing like really dumb stuff, like just smashing lamps, smashing vases, like people just like the very lowest common denominator type of art. Whereas like whenever he tries to do his actual stuff that he loves, no one really cares about it. And it's just kind of like this individual who happens to be a gorilla wrestling with this kind of like existential crisis. And yes, it is a person in a gorilla suit, but it's kind of like very like low rent. It's just like gorilla with sunglasses, but it's given so much pathos and just emotion. I just really love how it's handled, because like it's not being like, look at this gorilla doing this silly thing. it's a person that has, or an individual who happens to be a gorilla going about life. And it's like, yes, it's kind of quirky and fantastical, but it's also just like a nice drama, like individual drama, but it's like not just a drama, it's a comedy. So it's like a dramedy. It's just like a really fun independent film. And I really, really love it. And I'm glad that it finally did come to Blu-ray. And this is a really nice Blu-ray. It's a nice high definition transfer. These are usually very like, run and gun productions. I think this was like they raised like $50,000 on Kickstarter to make this. So it's very like 16 millimeter, still looks good, but like kind of a little rough around the edges, but not too bad. It's like a nice high definition transfer. Sounds good. It has DTS 5.1 and 2.0 audio, and it has a really great selection of special features. It has an audio commentary with the two directors. It has some about like 15 minutes of deleted scenes that you haven't seen before. It has like a section just called bonus videos where there's a few additional videos with Sylvio that run a few minutes. There's some music videos, and like there's the Kickstarter promo video, and then it has all of the original vines that were made of the like Simply Sylvio series. And whenever I was like, oh, they included the original vines, I did not know how many there were. And yes, they're 6 seconds, but there's over 800 vines. So it runs about 85 minutes long of just like all of these vines that they made over like several years, which I think is a really like impressive special feature that they just like included all of this on this disc. So tons of features. Really great insights from the commentary, great packaging if you get the slipcover from Vinegar Syndrome, but even if you don't, I still like the standard cover art. But it's just a really fun, quirky, independent feature that just like, it's not cloying. It's like, it's very grounded in a really fun way, and I really love it. So Sylvio is recommended if you like independent cinema.
Nice. That sounds awesome. I will also echo that everyone should check out your podcast. I love it. I'm taking a trip to the beach, so I'm gonna download some episodes to listen to on the car ride. So that's gonna be fun. But yes, it's always linked in the description, so you all should check it out.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So I'm also starting off with a good movie. The one that I really liked. I'm a big fan of Alan Ladd. It's interesting that he never became what I think is like a bigger sort of star. And this is called Lucky Jordan. And here is the back, and we got a nice commentary track. So this is cool because we do have reversible art. Look at that. Usually you don't get that with Kino, which is not a big deal, but it's always fun when you do.
Yeah.
So this was a really interesting movie. This is one that was completely not on my radar. It's a very interesting drama which centers around a gangster who kind of turns his life around after being drafted in the army. And he's kind of set up as this like lovable rogue. He's kind of a scoundrel, but I don't think he's ever like set up as a really terrible villain. In fact, later in the movie, he's like, I'm no saint, but like I'm not as bad as you, referring to like the real big bad of the movie. But he kind of does this grift where to get out of the draft, he cons an old elderly woman into posing as his mother. And I guess the scam is, well, I got a poor mother to look after, I can't be drafted. But that backfires. He ends when he's in the army, he ends up escaping, essentially, kidnapping a cadet, which is kind of yikes. But what's really fascinating is, and the whole kidnapping scheme kind of weirdly does not really figure into the plot a whole lot, strangely, but he ends up forming this really interesting bond with this old woman who, so they are posing as like mother son, but they start, even long after the grift is over, they were kind of revert to like calling each other mother and son, and it's really fascinating because it's one of those like really early movies where they really are talking about chosen family, and that's something that we kind of more talk about now, but it's really sweet and endearing, and she is kind of used as a little bit of a motivator to really get his life turned around. And it's interesting. It's the plot's a little wonky, like there's definitely like structure issues, but I think the whole chosen family aspect of it was really fascinating and interesting how they handled that. So yeah, it's kind of a cool movie. I think it's one of those, it's really a fun discovery. This comes from a 2K scan of a 35 millimeter fine grain, and it looks really nice. Again, so this was like 42. This does not look like a 70-ish year old movie. It really does look nice. No real issues as far as like artifacts or scratches or anything. I think Kino did a really nice job with this. It sounds good as well. The commentary track is really great. Gives you a lot of really good insight into the actors, the director, and it just gives you kind of some context between the time that this was made, and this was during World War II. So it's a fun one. It's really interesting. Again, it's by no means a classic, but I think if you like Alan Ladd, if you think that this sounds kind of interesting, it's very much worth checking out.
Absolutely. I covered that one on one of my individual Kino episodes, but I really did like it for the reasons that you said. I really liked the kind of the relationship with the older woman. Whenever they tried to do like the actual like romance stuff with the other, like the kidnapped victim,
Yeah,
that didn't work as well. But the relationship with the old woman, I was just like, oh, you're getting me. Like, yes. I like that she's also kind of a con woman too. And so they kind of like, they're each kind of like, we're like helping each other and everything. It's just, it was a really lovely time.
Yeah, and the banter, especially at the beginning with her, is just so snappy and vaudevillian. I love it. It's just it's great. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, highly recommend that. I'm glad you covered that one. My next title, I believe this is a Best Buy exclusive. This is from Lionsgate. And this is a new 4K re-release of Crank.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I'll show off this packaging a little bit since that is the primary motivator of this re-release. So I like whenever you take this off, the artwork underneath you.
Nice.
Yes. And then like here's the back. There's syringes and stuff going out there. And so here's the like stacked disc, but they're a little bit raised, so they're not right on top of one another. And I'll take these out so you can see the internal artwork. So here is just very colorful and rich and all that stuff. So let me gingerly put these back in here so they do not get scratched. So this came out on 4K probably about 5 or 6 years ago now. And this is the same disc as that release. I just never picked it up. I still was rocking the Blu-ray release, which I got out just for people to see the original cover art here. So this was one of the very early Blu-rays. I believe this was like 2006 whenever this came out on Blu-ray. So I've been rocking it for a long time. So I was due for an upgrade. But I was interested to see how this held up because I had not seen this movie since around the time I first got this Blu-ray back in 2006. And this is just such a wild movie, and it's very easy to kind of distill down. It's just like, what if speed, but inside a person's body instead? Because it's just about the Jason Statham character getting injected with, he's like a hitman who gets injected with this serum that if his adrenaline gets too low, he'll die. So he just has to always like be doing something that will excite him or just get his like adrenaline going. So that involves like getting into fights, like public sex, like doing drugs. So it's just like a less than 90-minute, just like insane thrill ride of debauchery and craziness, and all in the service of like trying to get revenge on the person who put him in this situation, which is, you don't really need to go into it because it's just like criminal organizations and people trying to screw other people over. But it's basically just a revenge tale after getting injected with these synthetic drugs. And the Chev Chelios character that Jason Statham plays, like he's a hitman, but you do like care about him, and you want him to survive this like crazy like journey. And there are issues with this movie. There are some representations of like trans characters that are not great, and so there are some dated elements. Because even whenever you're watching the special features, you can tell that the dudes that made this are just like bros, and they're not the most nuanced. But if you just kind of want to like have more of just like an insane kind of thrill ride that's like not always in good taste, but it's still pretty fun. I enjoy this. I enjoy it's also equally crazy sequel, which I hope to get a 4K at some point. I just remember seeing that in theaters, and just like whenever they turned into like kaiju people, I was just like, what is this movie? That's not in this, but like the Crank series, it just holds a special place in my heart. And like I said, this is less than 90 minutes, so there's like pretty much never room to get bored because there's just always something going on. But yeah, I understand there's some dated elements, but overall fun movie. And this 4K release, anyone who's seen the movie knows that this is not a beautiful looking movie. It's a very like garishly lit, highly contrasty movie. And like it's funny watching the special features, which are from the original like release, where they're talking about the new process of shooting in high definition like digital. They're like, we're not using film anymore, you can do all this type. And then there's like, but there's some drawbacks, but you like, we're shooting in HD and everything. And I'm just like, this is so dated. But it's I love just hearing like all these people be like, this is so crazy what we can do. But just seeing like their hyper saturated, totally blown out contrast, this isn't going to be like completely changed with the 4K. It does have a different appearance from the dated Blu-ray. Like I said, this is one of the early Blu-rays, and it's still not always pleasant to watch, but I think it's much more like reined in and like kind of controlled to a nice balance between like the highly stylized kind of garish look with like the like firm like control of like a 4K disc, where like some of the like highlights are a little bit more tame. The blacks aren't quite as like crushed. There's still some black crush, I will admit. Like, and so some of the grain is kind of more like the digital grain that's been added is kind of more resolved a little bit better. It's not, if you're looking to showcase the like capabilities of 4K, I would not jump to Crank as your first like stop to convince anyone, because it's still just a very kind of ugly movie, but it's a good release. This has Dolby Atmos audio, which is an upgrade from the old audio. Sounds really great. It has no new special features, but like I said, there's some special features, just like some various featurettes. There's like 4 or 5, where one's like showing the Comic-Con presentation from like 2006, I believe, and then just like some, like I said, talking about the HD, some stunt stuff. So just some standard featurettes. But yeah, it's a good release. And I know, luckily it hasn't happened to mine, but I know a lot of these early Lionsgate releases have like started to fail after a while. Some of my Saw movies no longer work. So I'm just glad to at least just have these newer discs in case that one would ever fail. I have this to replace it with. I hope my Devil's Rejects never fails before I get a 4K, but it's highly recommended if you're a fan. I like the packaging, but it's just a wild movie. And if you haven't seen it, at least check it out, because it's a wild ride.
Yeah, I've definitely seen both of them, but it's been a while for me. So this might be a good time to maybe revisit. So yeah, I'm glad that looks good. But I'm sticking with some action here, okay. And this is one where I think the marketing looks very generic, but I think it's actually, I mean, it's actually really fun, and that's The Siege. And now, have you seen this?
No, I think both Well Go USA titles you're talking about, I opted to not because I was just like, I'm not sure if this is for me.
Yeah. Well, and you're half right. The
Okay.
I like, and then the one I think is like terrible. But
Okay.
we like balance, and
Mhm.
I don't want to shit all over Well Go. They're great.
Mhm.
Some of the movies maybe mixed bag, but I really
Mhm.
like this. Again, the marketing makes this movie look very basic. And while yes, I think the movie does kind of tend to follow a very well-worn kind of anti-hero who is ultimately a good guy but has a very tragic backstory. Like it very much is that. But it's so bombastic. It's a thrill a minute action film. It very much feels like an old school, maybe like 80s or 90s approach to an action film. It also has a very weird sense of humor. Like, I'll give you an example. There is a sort of like a not musical moment per se, but it's like this one nerdy scientist is just getting his groove on. And it's like this whole and it kind of factors into the plot because he's not paying attention to like what's going on, so it doesn't necessarily not factor into the plot, but it's tonally kind of weird. But this whole movie's very hyper realistic, and I think that kind of works actually. So it is a lot of fun. It's a bloody action movie. It very much feels like Assault on Precinct 13. And, I could swear that even like the font looked very John Carpenter font esque. But yeah, it's really fun. I think it has some really interesting world building. And like the whole premise is his cover's been blown on a mission. He's an assassin, and he goes to this like warehouse place to lay low while they get him a new identity. And apparently, this happens to him so often that it's like a joke within this little community that he's always needing a new identity. Yeah, it's fun. It's a little predictable again. I think it is just a really good, fun throwback sort of film. We do get a little making of featurette, which I think is pretty enjoyable. I would have loved a trailer, but I always say that about everything. But yeah, and it's got a trailer, which that's not really a special feature, but anyways, yeah, it's fun. It looks really good. I mean, again, it's a newer film, so you're gonna really get a nice sort of crisp, clean end result. Sounds really nice. Especially on maybe not like the most comprehensive audio channel. It's still, you get that nice sort of bombastic sort of action, kind of flavor from the audio as well. So yeah, it's fun. I loved it. Again, I feel like it's not the best marketing, but I will say wholeheartedly, if you like just some dumb fun, it's not very long. It's a nice shut your brain off. This would actually be fantastic with like a group of friends just really getting into the kind of campiness. And again, the movie is somewhat in on its own joke with some of the quirkier aspects. So
Nice. Like I said, I wasn't sure about that one. Maybe you convinced me to at least try it out when I want some dumb fun. But
yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I need to sleep. Sometimes I watch too. So sometimes you just got to say no. But my next title did not say no to because I was excited. It's from one of my favorite new labels. I know I always talk about them, but this is from Radiance Films, and this is Red Sun. And I will show off this packaging. I will take out the little card here so you can see the artwork in all its glory. So got that there. This unfortunate
Oh, wow.
gentleman back here. And yeah, there is reversible art with the original German title. I will not butcher it, but yeah, it just translates to Red Sun. We have that, and we have a very comprehensive booklet in here, which I will show off as soon as I have gotten this safely in the packaging. So yeah, this booklet, love how thick it is. So here's the front, back, like nice, a lot of writing, a lot of essays, a lot of great insights in this. So like here's like all the table of contents you got right there. So always love their packaging. And so yeah, this is a German film from 1970. And so this is one, there's another movie I'm going to talk about later that I'm not going to go too much into spoilers because just to preserve some of the mystery of this, but I would just say the very basics of this involves a group of women. At the beginning, you see like a man return to visit his ex-girlfriend. They kind of start to reconnect, but then you start to realize that there's like a group of women that live together. And I guess the most basic thing I'll say about like after 5 days of being like if they've been with someone like a man for more than 5 days, they kill them. So like I'm not like I won't go into why or like how or anything, but I'm just saying like if you're a man in their orbit, you're probably not long for this world if you're wanting to stay around for longer than 5 days. So this is while that has like a very kind of like a kind of exploitation, kind of like potential for like violence, like type of premise. It's not very like hyper violent or anything like that. It's very a reserved film, and it was interesting to hear kind of how the director approached this film. He said he approached it as if he was like he knew that kind of the premise was kind of absurd. And he approached it as if he was making a documentary about the performers who were making this movie. So it's kind of like a very stark, very matter-of-fact presentation of these characters going about their lives, and just kind of like you see them just like making certain decisions that are very like they may be doing something like that has like big reverberations on the society, like the environment around them, but they do it kind of like nonchalantly because it's just like part of their day, and it's just like nothing's like really heightened or like melodramatic or anything like that, which I find to be a very interesting approach. And I really like kind of like the low-key nature of this. It's very like, yes, I guess you could call it kind of slow burn thriller is what I would kind of classify this as. There's like a little bit of like a feminist like bent to it, but this is made by a male director, so I would have been interested to see like, unfortunately there weren't a lot of women in German cinema at that time in the like 1970, which they kind of go into in one of the special features. But there's like I said, that feminist bent, and it's just a very engaging movie that it has a lot of like nifty twists and turns, but it's not completely about the twists and turns. It's more about kind of like this journey with these women, and I like how it unfolds. It's only like 90 minutes, 87 minutes. So yeah, just a hair under 90 minutes, and it like, even though it's slow burn, you never really feel bored by anything. So it keeps a really nice pace. And the special features and like this presentation really helps me like appreciate this more. This comes from a new HD transfer approved by the director. It doesn't say from like a 2K or 4K scan, but I still think it looks pretty nice. The original German audio is on there, and it has a select scene commentary from the director and one of the like people who like served, like who inspired the story. So they like take a look at like 10 scenes, I believe, and like kind of like shape. I found it interesting that they didn't just go for a full audio commentary, but like you can either view the scenes as like a play all, or you can like pick individual like kind of topics that they're talking about, which I find to be an interesting approach. I haven't really seen that much in like special features. Usually it's not quite that precise. And there's like two featurettes by some film historians. One is like a 21-minute like featurette on the movie itself, which kind of gives you like some additional insights into kind of what's going on with this movie specifically. And then one featurette is a 50-minute like video essay on New German cinema and kind of like how that evolved from like right after like World War II into like all the way up into like the 80s when there was like problems with like financing and all that type of stuff. And it's really interesting if you're a fan of international cinema to kind of get like a more of like a peek behind or a more in-depth kind of like almost like school lecture about how New German cinema evolved and kind of like who the main players were and what the environmental factors were that like influenced the narratives. As someone who's not like completely like a scholar on New German cinema, I find these types of features to be very like helpful in some of these like boutique catalog releases. I really love whenever like a label can make me feel like a better cinephile and like kind of more well-rounded. So I really love that that they included that in this. So if you're a fan of like New German cinema or want to get into it, Red Sun is a pretty engaging watch. It's a good release from Radiance Films, and it's just a good release all around. So yeah, highly recommended.
Nice. When you were describing it, it sounded a little like Fassbender, like with like the like being German and kind of quirky and
yeah,
having a bit of a feminist bent.
Yeah, and they do go into Fassbender like quite a bit in this document, like the 50-minute featurette. So definitely
that's cool.
On the right track. Yeah.
I want a really good release of Satan's Brew. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but that's a really terrific movie from him. But awesome. I'm going to talk about a not terrific movie,
okay.
Unfortunately. So this is called Bone Cold, and it is bone boring. So, slipcover though, if you care. We do have some not bad features. Like the blooper reel was actually pretty fun. No reversible art. But yeah, so this movie really tries. Well, I don't think it tries, but this movie wants. Maybe putting this better is this movie wants to be Predator or something more, a little more contemporary Dog Soldiers, but it ends up just being very dull. It's definitely not as clever or as interesting as it likes to think it is. The biggest problem is there's just long stretches of things not happening, or even when things are happening, it really doesn't feel like they are, if that makes sense. It's just everything's very dull. Like I sort of was like fast forwarding through some of this and you don't really miss anything. This is a creature feature, but they don't have the creature in very long. When they do, it's very ropey CGI. While we're talking about CGI, they do CGI blood. And I hate that. I hate that so much because blood is one of the cheapest effects. Corn syrup and food dye, like it really is like costs nothing. They do it because if they're lazy, they can just like, okay, we want this blood in post. It's just a very easy kind of thing, but it looks terrible. Like it's not convincing. And yeah, the acting is very wooden, and the problem is this movie wants to be this sort of deep, interesting, sort of like Hurt Locker-ish military creature feature thing, but the drama's bad, the acting's bad, it's not fun, the creature feature aspect is not well done. There's nothing about this I can recommend. I feel really mean saying that, but like it really just is a nothing movie, and it made me angry that I had to spend time watching it. But and I'm not shitting on Well Go because they just put it out, and I will say that for a kind of a nothing movie, it does have some nice features. I love a nice making of. I love a blooper reel. That and commentary tracks are like my favorite feature. So you know, 1 out of 2 ain't bad. But yeah, it's just it's. I wish it was so bad it was enjoyable, but it's not even that because it's just too dumb and boring to be
Mhm.
even enjoyable on that level. So Bone Cold, no thank you. Just toss it in the wastebasket. It's so bad.
I feel justified for having not chosen to view this movie. I mean, sometimes, like I said, I love Well Go too. They put out a lot of gems, especially like a lot of foreign language releases that are really like kind of great. But you really just have to use your instincts to know which one, like to kind of go, maybe try to do a little research with other reviews. Maybe I
Yeah.
know that's what we're doing for our audience, so sometimes we have to take a bullet, but I try to be very deliberate about what I choose to cover for Well Go because I don't want to have
Yeah.
to like shit on anything I know that's probably not going to be for me.
Yeah, and I did take a chance because it looked kind of generic, but then again, The Siege did too, and I had a really fun time with that. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to be more open-minded, but yeah,
Mhm.
this one is pretty bad. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to go with your heart, and it just led you astray with this one. So I know you have a pretty Kino Classics heavy slate, and I only have one this week, but it's a pretty good one. This is with Love Letters
Mm,
with Joseph Cotton and Jennifer Jones. So that
mm.
there. Um, no double-sided artwork, just standard Kino business as usual inside. So this is from 1945, and this is kind of a narrative about Joseph Cotton. He plays a soldier who is like helping out one of his fellow soldiers who is not quite as great with words as he is, and he writes love letters to his sweetheart back home. And through this process, Joseph, his character, starts to like catch feelings for this woman that he's corresponding with, but he knows that it's his buddy's wife, and just the war starts to wind down. Joseph is not very like explicitly stated, but you can tell he's kind of has a little bit of PTSD going on. And whenever his friend goes back home, he ends up, I would just say he ends up dead, and like he ends up meeting his friend's widow, who conveniently has amnesia. Through I don't want to spoil why, but there's kind of like this interesting kind of like mystery drama, like melodrama, where he knows who she is, but she like has no idea, like she doesn't even remember who she is. And there's like a like romantic dynamic that's like she knows that she loves someone, but she cannot remember who. And like she kind of like has remnants of these letters in her head, and so it's kind of like a romantic melodrama with a little bit of like mystery, like murder mystery a little bit with it. I there's a lot of elements in this, but it all works out pretty well, mainly because of the strength of these performers. They hold things down really well. The direction's pretty solid too. This is from director William Dieterle from The Portrait of Jenny and I'll Be Seeing You. I think he directed one of the film noirs I talked about in my set last week, but I cannot remember which one. But he's a great director. And overall, if you kind of like these old school melodramas, this one's a pretty solid one. This comes from a new 2K scan of the 35 millimeter fine grain. There is some obvious damage. I do want to point that out. Like you can kind of see that there are some reels that have like persistent kind of like lines that go through. Like so for maybe like 2 minutes or so, you'll just see like a faint kind of like enduring line going, and you're like, oh, this is just something that they couldn't or chose not to spend the time to like clean up extensively, I guess, because it was such like painstaking work. But it's not overly distracting, but like compared to some films that Kino's released, like there's a little bit more damage than usual, but it's not like a deal breaker. Audio sounds pretty good. There's like maybe one or two like kind of like distortion-y sounding bits, but overall it's pretty solid. Has an audio commentary from film historians Brian Reisman and Max Avery. And overall, good commentary, pretty decent audio visual, and overall good movie. I did enjoy the movie. So Love Letters, it's good, especially if you like the cast.
Nice. That does sound really good. Yeah, as you pointed out, I have a bunch of keynote titles. My next one, again, really interesting, and I really like William Wyler as a director. So this was like fun to watch because I haven't seen this before. That is Counselor at Law, and here's the back. I don't believe, there's no reversible art. So I think, we tend to take for granted how like there's all these like law shows and there's so much like I said, movies and shows about lawyers, like their day to day. There's like excellent YouTube channels like Legal Eagle that people can check out anytime they want. But back when this movie was made, this was 1933. We really didn't see a lot of this, and it's pretty groundbreaking. John Barrymore plays a lawyer who he came from very humble beginnings, worked his way up, and is a very prestigious lawyer in his firm. Early on, it's established that he won a murder trial, a woman that was accused of murdering her husband. And he got her off. Whether or not she really was guilty or not, the movie doesn't sort of linger on that. But like this has catapulted him into, being like a really like desirable lawyer now. It's interesting because we do like get the day to day of a lawyer, but also like the ethical and like legal kind of things that go on. So I think that makes a really interesting drama. The centerpiece of this movie is John Barrymore. He is fantastic. He really kind of sells what it's like to kind of struggle in poverty and then work your way up. But then there's the drama of like some mistake could completely undo all of his work and his social standing, everything, his relationships. Yeah, it's like a house of cards that might be just tumbling down. I think that the narrative is compelling enough to be engaging, though it doesn't seem very groundbreaking. But again, you just have to put it in the perspective of this was like early 30s. There probably wasn't a lot of movies like this, or certainly nothing that really went into any detail about a lawyer's sort of life and day to day. So I have to imagine that this inspired a lot of people maybe to become a lawyer or, kind of pursue that career. Melvin Douglas is in this. I love him. I could watch him read the phone book. Yeah, this is great. Again, William Wyler, he did, we just covered Detective Story not too long ago. He also did The Big Country, Ben-Hur, classic stuff. So is this as classic as those other ones? Not really. Was it an enjoyable movie? Absolutely. This was a really nice discovery. So check it out if that sounds interesting to you.
I would classify that one as solid. I'm always up for more William Wyler on Blu-ray, so I'm glad we got that one. My next title is we are entering the silent corner once again, as Andre loves to have fun with. Going for the newest release from our friends at Undercrank Pictures, with who I talked about with the Frank Borzage couple double feature a couple weeks ago. This is another double feature, and this is with the star Raymond Griffith. So there is Paths to Paradise and You'd Be Surprised are the two films here from the silent era. So I'm actually, so this one is actually a press disc. I know sometimes they do a burn disc, but this one, at least this first batch, so maybe put your order in early if you want a press disc. So I'm glad for that. So these films, or this release overall, is really good. The first film, Paths to Paradise, I like how these two movies kind of show like kind of the duality of Raymond Griffith, because the first film's Paths to Paradise, he plays one hat or like part of like he plays a like a thief, like a jewel thief, who teams up with another kind of thief, and it's kind of like ends up kind of like an on the run, like thieves on the run type picture. It builds up to that, but it's basically boils down to like a jewel robbery. But then the other movie, You'd Be Surprised, he is playing a detective who is trying to solve like a murder mystery. So you have all like these kind of colorful personalities within this group, and he's trying to deduce like who had motive and all that stuff. So you get the duality of Raymond Griffith, and both of these there are very like entertaining movies. They're not like super long. The first one is an hour and 7 minutes, and the other is an hour and 5 minutes. So people who are familiar with silent films know a lot of them were pretty short like this. Unless they're either pretty short or incredibly long, like the Indian Tomb, I believe you like was like 4 hours long. It was insane. But for the most part, they're usually pretty briskly paced. But so both of these are pretty entertaining. And one thing I do want to say about this, largely this release looks fantastic. This is one of the better like silent era restorations that I've seen. Both of these come from 2K scans of 16 or 2K scans of 35 millimeter nitrate prints for both of these from the Paramount archives, I believe. And they both look really great. But I will say that Paths to Paradise, unfortunately, the final reel no longer exists. So they circumvent this by like you get to a certain point, and then they kind of like put in kind of like the script text and like describing what would have happened if they like if they still had the like final reel of the film available for restoration. So that is unsatisfying on a narrative level, that you don't get to see kind of like this grand climax come to an end. But if the trade-off is never seeing any like the rest of the movie ever again, I think it's good that they still like took the efforts to restore this, even though you don't get to see the end. You get to read what happens. So I do want like to make that clear for anyone who's just like, what is going on? It's like these elements, they didn't exist. There's no getting them back, and this is what we have. The transfers otherwise are incredible. Like there are still like minor specs, but compared to many from this era, like there's no like crazy like damage or anything. It looks very nice. And You'd Be Surprised is completely intact. You get the full movie, so it looks really good too. Both are entertaining. This being from the 20s, there are there are some kind of insensitive things. Even and before Paths to Paradise, they even include like a disclaimer, like this is like the product of the period of time, because like there's especially like the way they treat Native Americans, I believe. I watched a lot of movies. I know they were disrespectful to a minority group. I do know that, but is very kind of like caricature-y and awful. But so I do want to also put forth that disclaimer so Paths to Paradise, multiple disclaimers for various different things. But overall, if you can get past that and you are interested in silent era cinema, this is a very good release. It looks good. The new scores sound really great. New musical scores from Ben Modal, who is also kind of over Undercrank Pictures as well. And then there's also an 11-minute featurette on Raymond Griffith, which kind of goes over his career comprehensively and kind of explains why he is deserving of recognition whenever he is like kind of been overlooked compared to like kind of like Charlie Chaplin, Harry Lloyd, like or Harold Lloyd, like all these types like silent era stars who people know, whereas not many people know Raymond Griffith, but he is worth knowing. And one thing I did find interesting about this featurette, I don't think it's a spoiler because it's like it's a special feature and it's real life, but you talked about Babylon a few months ago, and that kind of deals with the transition from silent era to sound and how it impacted different stars and how it like kind of like just made like a lot of stars like they could not make that transition to sound. That happened to Raymond Griffith because he had a voice that was very kind of like smoky and raspy, and like he could not like deliver a like performance that would be like compelling for the sound era audience, which I found very, very heartbreaking. But just like to know, like just to draw those direct parallels, I found very interesting. So this Raymond Griffith collection, very good, and I recommend it for silent era film fans.
Nice. Sounds really interesting. And yeah, as you mentioned, I do have a lot of keynote titles, and my next one is going to be one that's always been considered a classic, but I had never really seen. You probably have. My Man Godfrey.
I have not. No, this
Okay.
is new to me.
So I looked it up really quick and it nearly killed my internet. But this is really fun. Again, I have never seen it before, but had heard of it, of course. But I think maybe I was thinking of the 30s version. But yes, it's a very witty, very weird movie. This is definitely of the screwball variety, comedy variety, and yeah, David Niven is really fun as this very mysterious guy who becomes a butler to this very like I guess eccentric upper class family. The daughter falls in love with him. Shenanigans ensues. But yeah, it's really fun. It kind of put me in mind. Do you recall who the original director was? By any chance?
No, I can grab the original release if you don't mind being alone for just a second, and I can maybe give you more info.
Okay. But yeah, while you do that, I'll talk more about the movie. But yes, it is really interesting. I was curious who directed the original because this really reminded me a lot of like an Ernst Lubitsch film, which you know has zany hijinks, but also has a air of sophistication. Um, you know, talks about class system and does it in a way that doesn't feel preachy, but it feels still very palatable and interesting. So yeah, it was really good though. Henry Koster is the director of this one.
Okay, so yeah, this is Gregory LaCava's 1936 version
Okay.
with William Powell, who I often like kind of conflate with David Niven in my head, so I find that very interesting. So it's Carol Lombard and William Powell.
Oh,
So
nice. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think I was, yeah, that makes sense because I was confused because I was like, well, where's Carol Lombard in this? There's an actress in this that I swore was Grace Kelly. She looks so much like her, but it wasn't. But really fun story. But yeah, this was it's I would be really interested to see the original. You said you haven't seen, have you seen the original though?
I have
Or
not. That's one of my shames of having bought something but never having not watched it yet.
oh, I have piles of those, so don't
Yeah.
feel bad. But yeah, no, that would be interesting, like to do like a sort of a comparison. Maybe I'll have to see if that's on Criterion Channel. But you know, I'll probably end up buying the original. But yeah, this is really fun. This comes from a 2K scan of a 35 millimeter inner positive. It looks really nice. It's a color film, and everything really pops nicely. It's not what I would say the most visually sumptuous movie, but you know the colors do really pop, and they're balanced very nicely. No scratches. Um, Nothing that really like stood out as like being really bad. Like it's a really nice transfer. And again, you know, if you're kind of a fan of the original and are curious about the remake, here we go. Really nice presentation. Simon Abrams does the commentary track, and I found that really enjoyable as well. So yeah, really good. Highly recommend it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to add that to my collection, and I'll try to do like the compare and contrast, see which one I like more. I like these old studios, just like, just do it again. Like we had this a couple years. I mean, we're doing it now too, but it's always been a thing, so yeah. It's never new. So my next title, I know we like to talk about our spicy titles that we talk about. This has the appearance of a spicy title, but it's not really. I mean, kind of, but I'll explain. But just look at this cover art for Warm Water Under a Bridge.
Wow. All right.
Yes. So as I kind of alluded to earlier, this is my other title where I don't really want to spoil a lot about this. But I will say this is not quite as sexy as the artwork would lead you to believe. It's more of a kind of like almost like a farce or a slapstick, not slapstick comedy, but like kind of like a whimsical comedy slash environmental call to action. So yeah, I'll kind of like explain a little bit. So at the beginning of the film, this is, I will say, this is the final film. I probably butchered this. The final film from Shoei Imamura, who a classic Japanese director who he's had a lot of his like works. He has like a collection that I recently got from like Arrow Academy, which I'm looking forward to dig into even more. But he likes to kind of deal with kind of like the common man, and just like he's not interested in kind of like high class society. So he wants more kind of grounded people. And so this deals with people who are like down on their luck. One man, he's like kind of like on the verge, or he's like kind of on the verge of being destitute. He's like he's been like downsized from his company. He is kind of estranged from his wife. He has made like a friend who has just passed away, but before he passed away, he like left him like with the knowledge of this hidden treasure that he left in this house. He tells him the house of this in this city that he like travels to find this hidden treasure. But when he arrives at this house, he meets this woman. She has something about her that is very whimsical / fantastical that happens to her especially whenever she has sex. She ends up getting into a relationship with this guy who has come to town, and you start to see what happens to her, which it's wild. It's like one of the I was not expecting what happened, which is why I want to preserve the mystery for our audience who decides to check it. I will say it's not disgusting. It's just odd. And this also isn't like a like nudity filled movie. There's like very quick like shots of like butts and boobs, but it's more like played for comedy, because like anytime these characters are having sex, there's kind of like zany sound effects and like just like kind of like just the weirdest music, because like the director doesn't want us to be like titillated by this necessarily. But he does want it to be kind of like a sex positive, like sex is kind of goofy sometimes kind of thing. It's also kind of woven into this weird environmental message where there are things with her that's like impacting like the local fishing economy in a weird way. But you just got to watch the movie if you want to know, like unlock the secrets of this movie. But I really like how he balances like female pleasure with like this environmental message and like how you should not be shamed for like your eccentricities and your unique abilities and stuff, and how you should like kind of like take like be able to take pride in what's different about you type of thing. So there's a lot of like interesting messages within this kind of wild fantastical for like you can I kind of it's been described as kind of like a fable, which is like a good way to approach this, where it's just like kind of like impossible obstacles and just kind of learning to overcome them. And it's a very interesting kind of like breakdown of like fables and meta narratives and all that stuff. So Warm Water Under a Bridge, it's a really wild time, but this is a nice release. It says generically it's been digitally restored. It looks pretty good. I'm not sure if there's like maybe a color timing issue. It's a very warm film. So I'm not sure if there's been like a warmer tint applied to it or if it's always looked like that, but I think it looks nice. So if anyone comes at me and says like, this is not how it looked originally, I don't know. I've never seen it, but it looks good for what it is. And the audio sounds great. There is a 10-minute video essay that kind of goes into kind of like some of the themes of this. And I kind of showed this off, but there is a booklet that comes with this. It's not like, it's like 16 pages and get like a nice essay about stuff. So overall, Warm Water Under a Red Bridge it's an experience. Don't be shy. Like, don't think you're like, if you're like kind of like prudish, don't think this is going to be like a nonstop sex fest. It's not that. It's very kind of goofy and like warm-hearted. It's just it's a nice movie. I like it.
Nice. I am very intrigued. I am gonna make it a mission to figure out what's going on with that, because now I must know.
Yeah.
So you sold me. So I am also getting into some the silent corner here. With not one, not two, but 21 experimental silent films.
Okay.
It is the Silent Avante-Garde collection. So I'm not gonna like bore you by going through like every single short film. I will talk about it just sort of as a curated collection. And this is really nice. So I will say right off the bat that it gives you a really nice option if you want to select a certain film or if you just want to play it all. That's playing it all is how I did it. But if you wanted to not kind of marathon these, it's probably better to do that. But yeah, it's really interesting though. They range from like the second feature is just a 5-minute snippet of Einstein's Mexican footage. Like there is the first one is $24 Island, which is just sort of like almost like a travel log sort of kind of thing, but then it sort of starts getting into the more abstract, really weird. I think like I was trying to pick out my favorite, but Escape from 1938 was really interesting. That's only a 4-minute short. Life and Death of 943 was bizarre and amazing in the best possible way. It kind of reminded me of the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. I'm sure it was probably maybe modeled a little bit after that, but yeah, this is a really fun collection. There wasn't any that I really thought were duds. Again, these are really well thought out. So let me show you the inside. This has all the film titles. Let me pop this bad boy out here, and then you can see the interior a little bit better. But yeah, and I will say that they do a really nice job of like explaining the restoration process, the music that they use. This was music just done specifically for this project, and it's really cool. And the way they use it, I think, really kind of brings this already very provocative sort of short films to life in a bigger way. So yeah, you get stuff from all over the place: Mexico, Germany, France, United States. It's great. It's just it I will say if you are maybe new to sort of like the more experimental weird films, this is kind of a nice starting place.
Mhm.
Because I think that while some are maybe more accessible than others, it's a really nice buffet of different sort of styles and how to push the medium. So
Mhm.
I had a blast. I really had a lot of fun with this. Again, I had some favorites, but I think that there really isn't a dud to be found. Like I said, if you're a beginner to this, and I know like this kind of stuff can feel overwhelming, but I feel like again, this is a great place to start.
Yeah, that's awesome. I talked about the cinema's first Nasty Women earlier this year, which I really enjoy. So I'm interested. Like, it seems like it'd be a good companion piece if you're wanting to get a little bit more strange and, like I said, experimental. So I'm very intrigued, and you have sold me. Um, my final title, I was excited to catch up with. It's one I'd never seen before, but it is from Paramount. It is the Arnold Schwarzenegger sci-fi film, The Running Man,
Mm.
which was released on 4K Steelbook, I believe back in like October or November. I did not get that one, but now it is being re-released in a standard version.
Nice.
And it just comes with just a 4K, so you have to be 4K capable if you want to check this out. No Blu-ray, but it also does come with a digital code, which is not in there. So this is my first time watching this. I watched it earlier today, and I had fun with it. I found it interesting because just a few weeks ago, my wife and I we binged through the Hunger Games films because she just finished rereading the books, and I was just like, oh, it seems like Suzanne Collins may have gotten maybe a little bit of inspiration from The Running Man, just because I like how it is kind of like it's a dystopian future where there's like they are using like public fights and like survival tales to entertain the masses, and like using these prisoners like are in like kind of convicts and all that type of stuff in this kind of context of like sending them off to their death. Theoretically they could survive, but usually not, until in for like public amusement, until you get this one the character played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's kind of like unfairly sent to a prison at the beginning for like refusing to like fire on a bunch of citizens and just kill them without reason. He is kind of painted as like a villain to the public, and he eventually he escapes the prison, but once he is captured, he is put into this Running Man program, where he goes against all odds and starts actually getting further than anyone else has gotten into it. And I've covered Rollerball in the past, covers kind of similar themes of like public consumption of like violence and all that type of stuff. But Running Man was pretty good. It does have some elements that aren't like as strong. I understand why it's not regarded as one of like Arnold's like top tier classics, but I did think it's a very entertaining movie. I did like a lot of the set pieces. You have like classic Arnold one-liners, which I was just like,
"You cold-blooded bastard. I'll tell you what I think of it. I live to see you eat that contract. But I hope you leave enough room for my fist, because I'm going to ram it into your stomach and break your goddamn spine!"
Arnold, you son of a bitch, you've done it again. Like just the way he like weaves in these one-liners. It's amusing, but I think it's a good balance of like action and like dystopian sci-fi narrative. The like Arnold is as good as Arnold gets in terms of acting. It's not great, but it's fine. And the cast around him is also pretty solid as well. You have Yaphet Kotto, Jim Brown, who former football player who plays like a menacing villain. And who is the? I was trying to see the villain, like the main villain.
Oh, the host.
Might be, yeah, is it Richard Dawson? Maybe.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, but he plays like a scummy like villainy host, which is it's fun. So yeah, I had fun with this movie. I'm glad I got to see it. And so this 4K release is really solid. I know sometimes we talk about Paramount and we love them. We love how deep they go into their 4K catalog. Sometimes they don't always give the best encodes. This is one of their good ones. This is a Dolby Vision transfer that holds up very firm, like handles the grain very well. You don't have like bad compression artifacts. It has really nice colors. There's some very vibrant colors going on. A lot of like deep reds is like a reoccurring motif. And this doesn't have Dolby Atmos audio. It has the DTS 5.1, which sounds really good. I know people like who are audio fiends, like they might bemoan the fact of Dolby Atmos, but as long as you're getting at least the original audio, that sounds really great. I'm happy, so I'm glad that it sounds as good as it does. This doesn't have any special features, which I found very surprising. So if you own an older version of this, which this was put out twice before, once by Lionsgate about 13 years ago, I believe 2010, and then again by Olive Films in 2013, I believe. I know at least the original Lionsgate had two pretty decently length featurettes, like 20 to 30 minute featurettes, and two audio commentary tracks. So it's a shame they couldn't port that over to the 4K. So if you do have those old releases, might want to hold on to it just for the special features, maybe create your own combo pack. But the audio visual looks really good. It's like, I don't own the old releases, but from what I can tell, this like blows those old releases out of the water. I've always kind of been hot and cold with Olive releases because they release good films, but their transfers aren't always the greatest. But I'm glad this got a refresh. I'm glad I got to check this out. And I'm glad that even though the Steelbook was like I think it's out of print now, they've now released the standard version. So really good release from Paramount. Glad they put it out.
Nice. Yes, I see. I'm not I've only seen that once before, and I recall really loving it. So this seems like it would be a really good time to revisit that. But yeah, that's some good information about the features or lack thereof. So, that's a good thing to know before kind of jumping in if you want, like you said, make your own kind of,
yeah.
But my final title, I'm very weirdly split on. And it's weird because this is kind of a beloved movie. It even got a remake, and the remake's supposed to be not good. But that is The Longest Yard. And here's the back. Now, have you seen this?
It's been a long time, and I've seen the remake, and I remember enjoying both. So I'm interested to hear what you said.
Okay. So I'm a huge fan of Robert Aldrich. Like, he's directed some of my favorite stuff. Before I get too ahead of myself, let's just look at this. So again, I know we say this a lot, but if you want the slipcover version, you want to order it soon. This does include the 4K and a Blu-ray. And yeah, so the movie, like I said, I'm split. I really appreciate certain aspects of this film. I think, Burt Reynolds is at the zenith of his charm, his charisma. He is like, I think this was like 74. He did that pretty famous Playgirl spread, I think, about the same time. So yeah, he was just at his very peak of like Burt Reynolds Reynoldsness. But yeah, so he I wouldn't say he carries the film because there's a lot of really great actors in this. Eddie Alberts, for like my Green Acres fans, he plays this excellent villain in this. A lot of great character actors just fill this movie. Wonderfully directed. I think that there's some sequences that are particularly impressive. I think the way they shoot the climactic football scene is really great. Visually, football's a tricky kind of thing to handle. I think baseball's sort of better for movies, but anyways, it's very long. I think it's too long. I think you could easily trim out 20, 30 minutes and it would be better paced, more efficient. Tonally, this is really weird because it's very mean-spirited, but then it's trying to distract you by kind of doing like a look over there. It's not actually like horrible. Like, to give you an example, our lead character played by Burt Reynolds. I guess it's implied that he's a male escort and he has this heated argument with his client. Listen, sex work, not going to shame that. But she pisses him off and he violently assaults her very brutally, and then takes her car, while drinking, wrecks the car. Interestingly enough, they go through his charges. Assault is never one of them. Yeah, it's very much does not care about her being just like, he bashes her head against the wall. It's a little sickening. So yeah, that is our main character that we have to sort of root for. So I feel like that's an uphill battle, but even if and I try to compartmentalize and, okay, that sucks, but carry on. And it's still just not good. It's again, just tonally, it's a little wonky and weird. There's like hijinks that don't really further the story. I mean, it's like, it would be like fun deleted scenes that are actually just in the movie weighing it down. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting that they have like actual like real football players in this. I think that they do try to give Burt Reynolds' character some interesting sort of backstory / sort of redemption, although he still is an evil piece of shit, his character. So yeah, it's something. What did you think?
Yeah, like I said, I haven't seen it since the remake came out. Because I know the DVD was released shortly after, so that was like the mid 2000s, I believe. So it's been like about 15 years or so since I've seen it, or longer than that. So I don't really remember it really well. I just remember I still have the DVD and I remember liking it. And I also am a big fan of Adam Sandler, so I like the remake as well, which Bird is in that remake as well. The most I remember is like, this is fun, and I think it's like a pretty decent movie from what I remember. I know it has like a really big big following, and it's like been highly requested over the years because it's never even been on Blu-ray before. This is like jumping from DVD to 4K, which wow. There's also a separate Blu-ray for those who aren't 4K capable as well. You can either get it as part of this package or like as a separate Blu-ray itself. So this is like a big upgrade from the DVD, no matter which way you choose.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, that's why I feel so weird about this, because it is like such a beloved movie. And I do see the charm of it. It is well directed. I mean, Burt Reynolds really, again, it has so many great actors. I wouldn't say he carries the film, but like he really is the lifeblood of this film. So yeah, there's good things about it. It was really hard for me to connect with the characters, particularly Burt Reynolds. And yeah, some of it was just very cringe, but yeah, it's fine. Weirdly, the finale is not isn't really satisfying either, but it's not the worst thing the director ever made by far. I think that's The Choir Boys. If you ever, I mean, that's not like nauseatingly bad. Yeah, but anyways, this the features is great though. Really great commentary track, really good. It's a really good release. I just was a little bit kind of with the overall film.
That's too bad. I'm looking forward to checking it out and see how my modern sensibility, like current day sensibilities, mesh with this movie. But
yeah,
I'm glad it's at least getting this release for fans of the movie.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I don't think it's a terrible movie. I just think, like, I think there's a lot of good there. I just think, like, it's not even really so much like that I can stomach some of the more like cringy stuff. It's like more nuts and bolts of like the pacing and some of that kind of stuff that I think maybe derails it for me. I mean, I can even get past like Burt Reynolds kind of being like maybe not the greatest person, you know, like American Psycho. Patrick Bateman is a very compelling character, but he's awful. But that's kind of the point. So I don't mind following somebody that's not like a little bit of an anti-hero. Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's meh. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like it's like, I guess maybe my expectations were a little bit high because it's so hyped up as like a classic. But you know, I don't know. It's a great release though. It looks fantastic. Again, it's like I have never seen this before. But just looking at it, it really looks beautiful looking. Again, it's a very well shot film. Visually, it's really great looking. So to get that kind of refreshed upgrade is great. And I'm glad that you mentioned that it was just DVD because I was not aware of that. So that's even more exciting. Great release. I'm a little bit in between on the film itself, but I don't know. Maybe weigh in the comments and tell me why I'm wrong. And this is actually a masterpiece. Again, I don't hate it. I actively hated Bone Cold. Like that's a movie I hated. This one I just thought was fine. So I guess that kind of wraps up our episode. As always, we really appreciate any likes, comments. I noticed that we've been getting more likes and engagements with you know, all that like the comments and stuff, and you know, that helps the algorithm, that helps get this video out to more people. Really appreciate that. And as always, just, you know, thanks for hanging out with us.